Hey guys, I'm Mark Allen, BHSpringSolutions LLC and BHSpringSolutions.com. You have joined us for a very special session of High Power University, and this may be one of the most, I think, enlightening and enriching learning experiences about the high power design that one of definitely the most that we've ever done. So hope you enjoy this. This is not the kind of thing that just kind of walks into our shop every day. So we are really, really, really happy to be sharing this with you. Hey guys, I'm Mark Allen, BHSpringSolutions LLC and BHSpringSolutions.com. Back here with a great friend, BH veteran Allen, and he has brought us something that in all of the hundreds and hundreds, and I'm sure up to 1,000 now, high powers we've had through the BH Custom Shop, never did I have this day where somebody walks in with a gun that is claimed to have, get this, 108,000 rounds.
I'll document it if you want.
And I've known Alan just enough time to know that he's a reloading maniac, and he shoots his guns. And what did you tell me that new high power you've got? 2,000 rounds on it already?
Yeah.
And like 800 or something since you saw me like last week?
3 weeks ago.
Maybe
No,
2
2
weeks.
weeks
2
ago.
weeks ago, yeah. So he's putting a lot more rounds downrange than even we do, and that's saying something. But I wanted to show you this because what we're going to do with this is we're going to make a BH masterpiece, highly functional, highly reliable. Got my fingers crossed on this one. Heirloom out of this FEG high power that's got 108,000 rounds. But I want to show you a couple of things what we're dealing with going in here. Take a look at this trigger action right here. Now, this is not the trigger action you normally think about when you think about trigger action. But, man, everything about this thing is loose. Okay, now watch this here. I call this the auto-engaging safety. When you manually cock the hammer, watch this. Well, and this time it didn't do it. Let's try it again. Oh, you know what? I fired it, and it did engage. So that's kind of interesting. There it went. Now you saw it auto-engage that time when I cocked the hammer. That's one of the things. Now the other thing is when you pull the safety off.
You have to pull the trigger first.
Oh, okay, now.
Engage it.
Oh, okay. Safety's engaged. Pull the trigger. Okay, so the trigger pulls when the safety's engaged, but it only goes to half cock. So I guess we got that going for us. And see, was there something else, another something funky going on
Well,
with this?
like when you sometimes it'll drop to half cock when you're dropping the slide, to load the first round.
Okay, so like just racking the slide and coming forward like that. It's not going to do it for us today.
It won't do it today.
Yeah. Okay, but anyway, this brought us, there you go, the auto-engaging safety when you manually cock the hammer. So, hey guys, I'm going to stop the video right here and explain a concept I think is worth mentioning at this point. In Allen's pistol, it contains non-mated hammer, safety, and sear, and that's inside the frame just forward of the hammer. And those three components, hammer, safety, and sear in the high power, make up what we call the Holy Trinity, and that is the triad of parts that comprise the operating system. And those three are mated parts. And what has been attempted in this pistol over the years was to install somebody's aftermarket sear, and I think somebody else's hammer maybe, and definitely that's an aftermarket safety. And this is a strong example of the potential that you have when you start individually replacing out in any high power only a sear, only a safety, only a hammer. Always think of these as mated parts, and they make up a triad, or we affectionately call the Holy Trinity. And you don't want to break up the Holy Trinity if you do not have to. If you have to, expect that specialized fitting of parts will likely be necessary, and if it's not necessary, then you call that luck. But again, this is an example of the almost infinite possible malfunctions you can have when operating system parts are not not part of a triad, that is mated parts in an operating system. So we hadn't seen that before, so this is a feature that we're going to eliminate, hopefully, in this FEG high power. But here, let me do this. I want to go ahead and everything is just fluid in this 108,000 round FEG. By the way, this is one of like the original barrel?
Yes.
Okay, this is the 4th barrel this pistol's had. 3 of them did this. And that's a moment for us to show. This is really one of the really sincerest rationales for the BH Advanced barrel, by the way, is the tendency to leave that fracture risk kind of behind. Now, okay, I'm going to stop the video here just for one more second. And this is a fracture risk in high power barrels that we have not seen in the BH Advanced barrel for high powers. We have reinforced that barrel cam lug. That's the part that fractured off that barrel there in the picture. We've reinforced that forward of the barrel cam lug, and in 6 years of use so far, and our BH veterans, our customers using the BH Advanced barrel, we have no history of any fractured barrel cams or barrel cam lugs. So that was one thing I wanted to just mention. But the other thing I wanted to mention is fracturing of that barrel cam lug is often related to improper maintenance. The specific improper maintenance would be operating the firearm with worn out springs and not adhering to a maintenance schedule regimen of replacement of springs. What happens is resistance on the slide's velocity when reciprocating rearward and going back forward into battery becomes excessive, and when the high powers slide reciprocates, goes rearward, the barrel disengages from the slide, and that part that fractured, that barrel cam lug, that slams into another part in the frame. It's that crossbar. I call it sometimes, it's actually called the locking lug cam, or the frame's barrel locking lug cam. It's just above your trigger subassembly, and it looks like a crossbar in the frame. That's the locking lug cam. That's what that part of that barrel cam lug you see fractured off that barrel, that's what it slams into. That needs to be a controlled slam. It needs to have an optimal spring that controls that rearward initial bolt thrust that results in these types of fractures on barrels. It has fractured the locking lug cam in the frames too, which is a much more difficult thing to fix. Now, I've had a chance to take a look inside this, and I'll tell you what I was looking for. Is there been any tool marks, any cutters, files, anything like that going on inside? Don't think we have anything. The sharpness of these recesses in the slide, that's actually surprising. I mean, they're not like factory new, but I mean, there's still some sharpness. We can get a barrel. I think, to stay stable in there, and nothing that got scary about the slide. It's definitely very, very, very well used. You can see here how nice that is with where the hammer. This is where the hammer gets resistance from the bottom of the slide when the slide recoils, and the frame looks very clean. It's got a lot of movement down here in the trigger shoe. We showed that, and everything in here is, I think, it's past its useful life. So I'm going to stop again and mention that before we got knee deep into this project and before we invested into this project at all, one of the things that I did was under magnification, I looked at every hole in the frame and in the slide, whether that's a pinhole or a slide stop hole, or the part of the frame where the trigger extends down through into the trigger guard area, in the slide, inside the firing pin hole even, and everywhere. And what we were looking for was, have any of these holes been at all compromised so that they would have a hard time holding parts in the correct position? there was no signs of any issues or any problems anywhere in this handgun with respect to any of the cavities or holes in the frame or the slide, and that really that really gave us a lot of confidence that we could pull this off. And I will say that that is one of the lures to this, finding out this guy had this handgun, and he knew how much he had shot through it because he kept track of how much ammunition he reloaded. And apparently this was the only serious 9mm that he was pouring that ammunition through. So he knew how much ammunition he had loaded. He knew how much he had put through his FEG. And that, this whole story becomes quite believable when he explained it to me that way. And so at this point, by the time we made this video, we had decided to make a project out of this pistol because we had looked at it closely and we couldn't find any reasons in the frame or the slide that this was not a serviceable frame and slide. So that being the case, what we knew was if we have to replace everything else, we're able to do that. So, okay. We'll make a project out of this, and we'll make a few more steps as we're going along with this and just show what we're doing kind of step by step to your old FEG. Alan, thank you.
You're an artist.
Thank you very much for entrusting us with this 108,000 round high power.
I'm looking forward to getting it back.
Folks, we'll see you in the next session. I'm Mark Allen, BHSpringSolutions LLC, BHSpringSolutions.com. So Alan Davis and his 108,000 round high power. One more look at this. That was the left side. Here was the right side. When we inspected this pistol, though, that really is what kind of told the whole story. It was ugly just to look at. There's one of the 3 barrels he fractured in 108,000 rounds. I want to give you a quick look at the inspection, though. We noted here that aside from the slide and frame being in poor condition, the safety comes up when the trigger is pulled. The hammer drops with the safety engaged and periodically does not go into battery. So that's kind of bad news all starting out. You're going to notice we have a letter coding system here. D means defective for that component. M would mean marginal. S means serviceable or satisfactory. And you're going to see almost everything was either defective or marginal and required replacement. And it went on for pages of just, defective, marginal, defective. Lots and lots of defective components. I don't even know that we even reused anything in this entire pistol. Okay, I'm going to stop the video again here and just share a couple more tidbits of information. We did not reuse anything at all that came out of or off of this handgun. It all just got bagged up, and there was nothing worth using. That definitely kind of makes this handgun a first because, most normally you find something that's still serviceable, but, roll pins didn't spring back anymore. I mean, just everything was shot and nothing was worth reusing, frankly. So that's one thing, one lesson that we learned. Another thing that I do want to point out is a project like this one, and it's rare for them to get to be much more involved and much deeper than what we're having to go on this FEG here. What is sometimes difficult, I think, for probably both owners and even maybe a lot of gunsmiths or other shops is to know where does a project like this start and stop, because it's really difficult to get an image of it when you're standing there looking at the gun without dissecting it. And that, I think, is one of the things that really proved valuable in this project was BH's inspection process for high powers, because once we get to the end of this page that you see there on the screen and the notes about the comments of the things that are absolutely require replacement, along with all the marginal stuff that you really just don't want to put back in the gun, is this defines where is the start and stop, and specifically when are we done, when are we finished with this thing, because what does it look like when the answer is what needs replaced, and the answer is absolutely everything. So you know, which I guess, you know, yes, on the one hand it does simplify things, you know, to a degree, but you know, most high powers fall somewhere between new in the box and the one that we're talking about here on the screen, and the importance, and I think the efficiency and the benefits for the owner of this kind of detailed inspection process is it takes, you know, so much or all of the guesswork out of servicing a high power and bringing it to optimal, meaning optimal reliability, optimal functionality and performance and accuracy. So we're going to go ahead and continue from this point. We called for replacement of virtually just about everything. And now, when this was test fired, we're going to get to the punchline here. When this was test fired after our build out process that looks like this, that also goes on for pages, but it doesn't leave anything to chance and everything gets covered. We're going to run here to the punchline and we'll see that we measured the finished trigger brake weight, breaking between 5 and 5.5 pounds. We're extracting empty shell casings of the spent ammunition casings 5 to 7 feet away. And we have a shooting target at 10 yards with no malfunctions that looks like that. And that's pretty good. And we'll see if we can find... I want to mention that target there was shot by BH's right hand in our Dave in our shop, and that was not using a rest, by the way. So you know that's pretty good. Finished pictures here, pretty nice, and we're just going to show this to you up close and personal, just like that. That is the Ugly Duckling, the 108,000 round high power pistol of Mr. Alan Davis, and that's going to be going back to him real soon. He's not seen this. We're going to do a little... I do want to stop again and mention one thing that we didn't focus so much on this video, but a couple people who have already seen this, you know, asked me, you know, okay, but how'd the pistol feel? I mean, did the frame slide feel, you know, sloppy? No. That's something that we're going to talk a little bit more about here just momentarily. But the answer is no. I mean, this thing felt very solid, and shooting it felt very solid, very confident, very sure, exactly like what we would expect from our work when we build one back out as we did this one. And it just is now again a highly reliable, highly accurate, highly functional, high power pistol. And granted, there was nothing salvageable. You know, the frame, the slide, that's it. But the frame and the slide, these are the almost virtually impossible to replace two components of a high power pistol. These are your, if you want to say, your permanent mated duo or parts. So of particular interest with 108,000 rounds, I want to give you a hint about one of the big punchlines of all this for us was at 108,000 rounds, what are the frame and the slide really like? What happens to a frame and a slide? Everything about them. What happens to them after 108,000 rounds? And the astounding answer is there was not one thing, big or small, at all, that would be a disqualifier for this frame and this slide going down the road and being deemed serviceable and fit for service and fit for a build out like we did, because they're you know, other than, you know, the fact that it was aesthetically ugly and extremely dysfunctional, which we can handle that. You know, aside from that, there were no places anywhere where there was an unusual amount of metal missing, worn away, in any way at all that would, you know, say, you know, nah, you shouldn't reuse this frame and slide. So, you know, to say that this is a big deal, a big learning moment for us, and I think a lot of people is that would be to say the least about this. We're talking about, and it's not the fact that this is an FEG or made in Hungary, or that has little to do with the part that I'm referring to here. This is an attribute or a quality of the design, and the design specifically being the frame and the slide. I happen to believe and understand that in the high power pistol, which is not an actual John Browning design per se, John Browning's, perhaps his greatest influence in the high power pistol was in specifically the frame and the slide, and some of the reused components from the 1911, like the firing pin retaining plate, some things like that. But some things that come out of this, and some understandings that come out of this are, and I'll just kind of put it in this context. Today, our United States military is investing in buying sidearms for our military that have an expected service life, if I'm not mistaken, of about 25,000 rounds. And we're looking at a design here where some of the true, most hardcore design genius of the high power pistol, I think we're just now learning the extent of it. And when you see a 108,000 round frame and 108,000 round slide that frankly have not been properly maintained, has functioned in far less than optimal easy conditions with worn out springs, non-mated parts, dysfunctionalities of multiple types, and you would expect that this would, to some degree, somewhere, this would have at least a normal or exaggerated wear effect somewhere, somehow, on the frame, slide, or with each other, on the slide rails, frame rails, something. And there's just nothing. We found nothing. Now, the internal parts, those will wear out prematurely. Those will be a reason you have to replace something. And when they do, generally they don't negatively impact the slide or the frame. And this is key. I mean, that's really what you want in all respects. And so I hope you won't think I'm just going on and on and on and on about this, but the knowledge of the high quality of the design effort that created from the beginning the P35, the high power pistol. This is truly on a level of genius, and what this FEG at 108,000 rounds proves to us, in me, is there is a genius level of this design, of the specific design of the frame and the slide and its components, that we really had no way before this pistol to really see it and really appreciate it and start to wrap our heads around just generally what that means. Because goodness gracious, I mean, we're looking in that picture at a frame and a slide that have exceeded the life expectancy of our current U.S. military's pistols by a factor of more than times 4. And I can't give you one even slight small reason to think that Alan Davis won't be able to go down the road and shoot many, many more tens of thousands of rounds out of this same pistol, especially if he follows BHSpringSolutions recommendations as far as maintenance and spring change and normal protocol for getting this pistol checked out thoroughly, periodically, every 5,000 rounds, especially on a high power of this age, would not be overkill, would not be over maintenance, so to say. I have to tell you, I personally hope Alan starts shooting this pistol a lot, and I hope he puts many, many, many more 10,000s of rounds through it. And if there's something we can learn, we'll be grateful. But at least for us, we rebuilt out this entire bare frame and bare slide, all with components from BHSpringSolutions inventory, and the result and the outcome, to say that we're pleased with this, obviously, of course we are. But more than that, I think all of us can look at this and understand that the high powers we own, and specifically the frames and the slides, these are components with a potentially highly unusual lifespan and highly unusual potential for longevity. That I'm going to just say what this proved to me is that there is a genius level in the frame and the slide of the P35, the high power pistol, that I had never been able to see before, because I had never seen a high power with this kind of round count before. And I had never had really the opportunity to appreciate what I'm sharing with you now, that I'm appreciating so much more today about this high power design after having seen this 108,000 round FEG. Love video production with him when we give this back to him, and we want to see the surprise I think it will be for him. He's got night sights, he's got just new everything all the way around, and I will tell you, it feels surprisingly good. Frame and slide actually were in okay internal condition. The exterior was very, very bad in some places, and that took some work to get that out of some of the metal areas. But the components were shot, but the firearm is back together now, and we're looking forward to a reunion for Alan with his 108,000 round FEG. We're going to call it now the BH rebuilt FEG high power for him. Folks, thanks a lot for watching. I'm Mark Allen, BHSpringSolutions LLC, BHSpringSolutions.com. Okay, so we're back a few months later, back here at our shop with our friend Alan Davis. Alan, I'm going to refresh with you real quick. We'll even show in the camera. That looked like the right gun?
That's definitely it.
That we took in? Okay. We'll see here. That's the paperwork that we generated. Mm-hmm. That's going to tell you everything that was done with the firearm from start to finish, from the inspection that showed virtually everything in this thing was either defective or marginal. But
I know the operating system was pretty flaky.
It was the self-engaging safety or something like that, right? Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll see if you recognize this or not. Okay, I want to stop the video here real quickly and just tell you we had some kind of a glitch in our audio in this recording, and part of Alan's audio did not come through for a couple of moments, but I think you'll be able to understand what he's talking about here by the parts that did come through.
That cannot be the same gun. That for a new front sight.
You got new front and rear night sights. Safety feature, we deleted that.
The trigger pull on this thing is amazing. Or you have a lot of take up and no over travel, or you have no take up at all with a world of over travel, and this gun has neither.
Right, you got about 5 to 5.5 pound trigger brake.
Yeah, and just.
Okay, I want to stop here one more time and mention, Alan gave us his pistol, and basically our agreement was, if you'll let me, do this or, handle, what needs done to your pistol to get this thing back, right. and let me do whatever I decide to do to it. We'll do this as something we can do for High Power University because there's so much to learn from a 108,000 round handgun. And he agreed to that. So the way it was configured, it went back without SFS. It went back with a traditional operating system, and it did go back with a traditional trigger, and then we had the BH extended slide stop, which allows you go ahead and remove that slide stop with a slide forward. It makes disassembly and everything easy, and function very easy. Also, the convertible ambidextrous magazine catch we installed, but generally we wanted this to be as familiar for Alan as this thing had been for over 100,000 rounds, and it's kind of the reason why we didn't go with some of BH's upgrades that otherwise would be top shelf stuff that we would be putting in most handguns. In this particular instance, we wanted to restore this back to a level of familiarity for Alan that would be like having the same old gun back, but a lot of improvements and everything, but same manual of arms, etc. So that was kind of how that was how that was decided. But he is correct about the way we tuned this trigger out. This is a stock. This is a stock Browning OEM factory trigger subassembly, and because this is the Type 1 sear lever, it did obviously include our Type 1 safety sear lever with spring. So we added elements and margins of safety to his FEG, and okay, we'll just about finished.
That good on high power. Even the aren't that good when after they're worked on.
All right, we're going to give Alan a few minutes to get reacquainted with his FEG 108,000 round high power, and we may have some more reactions.
It's almost too pretty to shoot.
I want to just stop right there, and I do want to just kind of conclude some of what we were considering to be noteworthy learning, and kind of how that applies to 2024 and beyond here in the real world, and it's this reality that this is a frame slide design that by design is engineered and set up for the potential of extremely virtually unheard of levels of use, and remaining with the potential to remain fit for service. And a lot of what I would call that potential, would be, one variable is going to be maintenance and keeping optimal springs in a high power pistol. But you can see that even when that isn't happening, because Alan really didn't know how often he should change springs in a handgun. Alan did something that's totally believable here. FEGs were sold for cheap in the United States as new high powers back in the day, and guys bought these things, and then they figured out, man, this thing runs reliably, and it shoots straight, and it's really nicely balanced in the hand, and it points itself practically, and they just kind of fell in love with them, and and it's kind of like one of those things, like I didn't spend that much for it, and it's so darn fun, and I shoot extremely well with it, and so consequently, these guys put these things through a lot of use, and so one happening along like this, is again, it's completely believable, and I know Alan, I think well enough now that this was no exaggeration going on here in this picture. This really, though, before seeing this high power handgun at this kind of round count, we had no reason to ever even think about this, frankly, or even have this conversation at all, because who knew, and how would anyone know? And you know, it's only, you know, because this guy, you know, happened along to us, and we, you know, heard about this handgun, and he actually contacted us to tune something on his Gersan MC P35 high power clone, and in the course of that, he told me about this 108,000 round FEG high power, and of course I had never heard of such an animal, and I had to see it, and he brought it, and that's just one thing led to another, and you know, and I'm going to admit, you know, I couldn't resist. You know, one reason I couldn't resist was because I thought, you know, we just have to see if we can do it, and see if there's anything in this picture, and particularly specifically the frame and the slide, in terms of wear, in terms of, you know, lost tolerances, in terms of wallowed out holes, in terms of absolutely anything that, you know, comes up as a stop, you know, in our ability to bring this thing back to life. And I have to tell you, this was great fun, but what we learned, you know, is, in fact, I mean, in some ways, I think I'm still kind of digesting it, because, again, we can't attribute this to, you know, some, you know, unusual steel that was being used in Hungary back in the day. No. Or, you know, the prowess of their manufacturing. No, they didn't hit many tolerances, honestly. No, it's the design itself, that where what we're talking about is, we're talking generally about the cooperation of parts, cooperation of components, cooperation of the frame and the slide and all of their components. And when these things don't function right anymore, what's the trade-off of the design? In other words, what fails, what wears out? And it's always the parts. We see nothing. I mean, and this was just the classic one. I mean, you got a trigger in there. Who knows how long that thing had been so worn that it was just loose and just like flopping around virtually inside the frame area where it, you know, comes into the trigger guard. You know, Allen was known so much for, you know, even after this thing started to have operating system malfunctions, you know, he knew the workaround for it, and he continued to shoot this at least for some time. You know, the fact that never resulted in any injury to himself or anybody else is a very, we call this luck, frankly. Now that we're seeing it sort of, you know, after the fact, and, you know, however many years in Allen's rearview mirror, it is fortunately something that is, you know, when you think of the combination of things that had to happen in order for this gun to land in our hands, you know, it's really quite something. But what we learned, and we couldn't have anticipated or otherwise understood, is truly something. And I'm going to go so far as to say, you know, in the 2020s, you know, Springfield has a high power clone. Gersan has, you know, multiple models. The Inglis has just come out, and as we're making this video, our evaluation and analysis of the new Inglis L9A1 is almost complete. We'll be releasing that. We're excited to, and one thing that we can say about all of those models is, the frame and slide of all of those models they've adhered to the design elements generally that can translate into the kinds of service life that we see in this FEG's frame and slide. You know, we've hardness tested their frames, we've hardness tested their slides, we've hardness tested their locking lug cams, and we've hardness tested all of the hard parts. And you know, honestly, all the parts, all the internal parts in the high power, by design, these things are dispensable. They're replaceable, and it's rather easy, and it doesn't break the bank to do so. And that's where all the wear happens. That's where the need for replacement, springs, maintenance of some of the hard parts after, you know, 15, 20, 25,000 rounds sometimes, yes. But that's easy stuff. The design genius that has emerged about the high power pistol through this is how this design literally preserves the integrity of the slide and the frame by design and virtually against almost anything in terms of internal wear, neglect, lack of maintenance. The design preserves the integrity of the slide and the frame, and today's it's also frankly generally the strong suit of today's high power clones from Springfield, Gersant, Inglis. Their slides and frames are quite frankly the strongest parts of their pistols. And I think that's across all three of them, and that's great news. I mean, it's it's the best news. It's the news, frankly, that you want. This sort of confirmation, though, that the high power frame and slide are capable of 100,000 plus rounds, and at this point, nobody knows how long that frame and slide are going to keep functioning. I can tell you that the components that we put into his Allen's handgun are all brand new components. Generally speaking, the extractor, as an example, that should be good for, as a minimum, 12 to 15,000 rounds, and could require replacement. We would recommend just full spring replacement in his handgun every 5,000 rounds, and that's not overkill when the gun frame and slide already have 108,000 rounds on them. It's good insurance. It's good. It's just good practice in any high power, frankly, and any rounds out of this frame and slide going forward are going to be far more kind to the frame and the slide than many tens of thousands of rounds that went through this pistol were. So in that context, and for that reason and rationale, is this frame and slide capable of going another 20, 50, 100,000 rounds? We encountered absolutely nothing, and believe me, when we do specialized metal work on an exterior of a stripped out frame and slide, and we media blast them, and we have just the most world's perfect look at the raw steel all over everywhere, and there's just nothing in sight, big or small, that makes suspect that this frame and slide could go on and continue going on for a very long time. So in that context, I think anyone who has a high power pistol, your frame and your slide really have got to be looked at and seen as a different kind of asset, as a different kind of potential lifespan, because the design just has a level of genius that prior to seeing this handgun, prior to doing this project, we had no reference points to even talk about it. Now that we do, this is a element, an observation, I think, about high power history, and what we've learned about the design itself. This really is noteworthy, something to be shared. BHSpringSolutions LLC, BHSpringSolutions.com for High Power University, and we do thank you for watching.